So let's start this.
Yeah, I would say so too. We have one special guest who's coming into us from the field, and he'll come in when he comes in, and we'll see him appear. But I want to welcome everybody to season 2, episode 34 of Baseline Tech Talk Tuesday. And if you're new with us today for the first time, you can catch all the previous episodes on YouTube. And the channel is Baseline Web Training, all one word, on YouTube. You can find all the Tech Talk Tuesdays. You can find all the how-to videos that Dan has produced. And you can find a lot of answers to frequently asked questions about baseline control systems. So head to YouTube and get all your questions answered. Yeah. The topic for today is going to be control damage, primarily due to lightning, but other surge events. And we're going to be joined by Idral Bowen, who is in the field in Central Florida. And he's going to chime in here shortly. We'll do a couple quick introductions. We have Chris Wright, VP of Sales, Dan Conger, our training manager. I'm Andy Humphrey, irrigation technology consultant. And yeah, so we're going to jump right in and hopefully bring Idral live from the field. And if for some reason his connection doesn't come through, we're going to show some pictures that he's in the process of taking and talk all about controller surge and lightning damage. So why don't you take it from here, Dan? And we'll just kind of chit chat before Idral jumps in.
Yeah. So the idea was to put Idral out on a lightning prone site because he's in that part of the country that has sites that get a lot more lightning strikes than I get on my side of the country. But really, and that kind of leads into how do we prevent that damage? And I think there's two parts on this one, right? Is we wanted to talk about today about look at a site, look at some of the precautions that we take in the site, some of the real damage that can happen if you aren't protected. And then next week, we're going to go into testing and 3-point grounding testing and the actual measurement of that. So there's the why and then the how to next week. So 2 parts on this one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So maybe we ought to
hello.
Maybe we ought to start by identifying just an overview as to what our grounding specification is.
Yeah. So there's a couple so I was trying to figure out if I was going to try and summarize that. I'll give you a couple of high points on it, but towards the end, I definitely want to point everybody to our grounding spec, which is all encompassing. Mm-hmm. But the general gist of it is we want the controller chassis or the cabinet pedestal, or we want that grounded. 2-wire, conventional wire, doesn't matter. Then we want, if it's 2-wire, we want the 2-wire path grounded along the 2-wire path. Right. Idral, that's look like Idral's got a pedestal out there in the field. So we want grounding just shortly after the controller in the first 25 foot. And then specs are every 600 feet along the wire path, and then any spurs. And then grounding points along those can be a rod, can be a plate. And Idral has an interesting mix here. So cool. That's just kind of a broad overview. Yep. So well, Idral's showing us a pretty picture. I'm going to share my screen because I've got a couple of things that will kind of frame of this a little bit. So, you know what? Well, we didn't get Idral to introduce himself. Idral, are you even there? Can we hear you?
I'm here. Yeah.
Beautiful. And you're in Central Florida right now?
Right, it's Florida.
Okay. Okay, so here I've got a map. We got a big delay here.
I think Idral may have just shocked himself.
He wasn't grounded properly.
Yeah.
Like we said, we don't know what's going to happen today. Maybe an alligator is going to come out and bite him in the heel. So here I've got a map that shows lightning strike frequency across the U.S. And usually I don't have the table, the key shown, but I wanted to show the key on this one. And so Idral's in Central Florida, where there are between 10 and 14 lightning strikes in a year and this is per square kilometer. So there's a lot of lightning strikes in Florida where he is in a year. I live in California on the opposite side of the U.S. in that gray zone, and we get, according to this chart, between 0 and 0.1 strikes per year. So basically that's saying, yeah, maybe every 10 years I might see a strike. That's not far off from what I've seen. Andy, you're that light green, dark green.
Yeah, dark green up there in northern Michigan, and
1 to 2 strikes a year. Okay.
Yeah.
And Chris, you're probably about the same.
Yeah, I'm in the dark green area there in Utah.
Yeah. But the truth is that, even though we may see just a handful of strikes in a year, or I might just see a handful in my career, the damage to a controller is pretty dramatic, right? And all it takes is one strike, and an unprotected controller can be really bad.
Yeah.
So,
and what I thought was interesting about this, Dan, is I may have just been naive, but until working with Baseline and starting to work with engineers and talk about grounding and all the things that we're kind of going to cover today, I didn't know there was a difference in lightning strikes in different parts of the body. It's not something that people usually give a lot of thought to. And it's actually kind of interesting when you think about it. And so it isn't just equal everywhere. So that's something to consider when you're designing and installing a system, is really this. We have one spec, kind of as if it's the same everywhere, but because it's not, you could think of, where Idral is to maybe do more than we ask for. And not that you need to do less, but that if you're in the gray, the risk is less because of this.
So to that point, I think you're kind of alluding to something, that the spec is required. It's the minimum. You can always do more than what we require. On any aspect.
Yeah. And in areas like Florida where Idral is, our general spec says to ground the 2-wire path every 600 feet, right? And on any spur over 50 feet. In a lightning prone area like that, you may want to double that, right? Or cut it in half. So 300 feet, any spur over 25.
What were you about to say, Idral?
I think our specs now include every 300 feet in lightning prone areas like the Southeast.
Yeah. So you're right. So I've got we'll point you to that hard spec before we let you go today. So, this is a great picture I got from one of our partners with DBC, and this is a controller that has been blown off the wall.
Hot in the act, midair, right?
That's right. And this is just, I love this picture. It's so impressive between, seeing it flying through the air, but also the 4 or 5 scorch marks that for no reason it could have burned down the building. Right. And it just brought that wire path, just brought that surge right into the building. And there's no doubt in my mind that this was not grounded. Now, this was not a baseline controller. And the phrase that I kind of heard is, someone let the smoke out of it. You're supposed to keep the smoke inside the electronics. And we have one in our office that's been smoked, and they just smell awful for years. There's just no getting away from that smell. So yeah, so this is one of the things that can happen, right? And this is it. The wire path has been damaged, and then it just terminated and brought it right back to the controller.
Yeah. And I think the point to make is if, site is grounded to our specification and the controller is grounded properly, wherever it is hung or installed, that it is covered under warranty, even against strikes like this, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, if you had this, to Chris's point, if this is grounded properly and this happened, you're going to warranty it out and we'll replace it. Absolutely. Now, this is a picture that Idral sent me, and this is a baseline controller. This is a pedestal, not nearly as dramatic, but still brought the controller down. One of those boards was damaged, and it looks like I can even see a little bit of scorch on those wire path leads. So brought that right back into the board, and that's about all that was damaged. So that was grounded, but still damaged part of the controller.
Dan, is that a picture from this site that Idral's on?
Ooh, Idral, I don't know. I don't. Okay. So it is. Okay.
Yes, it is.
Wow. Okay. Good thing we've got a plan B with our video for you today. It sounds like you're gargling a cup of water. And this is one that I was out when I was out visiting the Idral in Florida, and we were out on a site, and I found something, and here's what it should look like. So here's a 2-zone bicoder, right? So we've got the white, orange, and yellow leads that would go out to the zones. And notice so you got those 3 leads coming out, and we've got the 2 LEDs where my ring light caught those. Okay, so I want you to pay attention to that. And this is what I found. That's all that I found. And we know this is exactly the same thing, right? So we can see there's 2 LEDs and the yellow wire is gone, but this is the only chunk left of a bicoder.
Wow.
Now
That's
I wonder.
amazing. So I haven't seen that prior to right now. So where did the rest of it go?
I have no
Away?
idea.
It liquefied.
That looks like an ice cube. You freeze the decoder and then you slam it on the concrete.
Well, and the truth is, I've got it right here. The back of it isn't even here, right? We've just got the back of the pot. This is just the potting portion of it. So the rest of it is gone.
Yeah,
When
can you hold that up to the camera, Dan? That little piece.
Yeah, that's not much left.
No. Now the question is would we warranty this out?
If it was grounded properly.
I mean, if you just return this device, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Don't give away any ideas, Dan. We don't want people returning 4 decoders for one.
Got to chop them up. Yeah. Okay. So those are mine. Now, Idral, do you have let's try your video out. Let's see if your video works. And I know you sent me a couple of pictures, so I've got my backup here. So let's see if your video can work on your damaged piece. See if we can bring it back online.
All right. If I stay off underneath the 10, it does better.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Oh, yep. That's very similar to what we saw in there. So what's on the front side of that board where that damage was?
That typically is the damage that comes from the 2-wire path. When I talk to our guys in the support group, tech group back there.
Okay, so it looks like those capacitors or something like that would. Okay, yeah,
yep.
That'll stop it dead in its tracks. So let's use that as a segue into what happens when something's damaged. So Andy alluded to warranty, and so does Chris, right? So if we've got a warranty that's going to cover this, that's kind of a pain though. I mean, warranty's great, but how long is the site going to be down, right? They need to pull out those parts and send them in. So there is a delay there on that time. And Chris, you kind of talked about going more frequently on the grounding points along the wire path. That's, even though it's not required by our specifications, for instance, every 300 feet. And Idral, I think you said they're grounded every 400 feet on this site. They're less likely to have damage when you go take our spec higher.
Yeah. So let's perhaps talk about the purpose of the lightning arrestors, right, that are installed with the ground plates or the ground rods on a site, and what their job is or their purpose on the 2-wire path.
Yeah.
So with those, it is intended to isolate or off-ramp that surge that may be on the 2-wire path and eliminate extensive damage that may result if that surge were allowed to just go from point of contact all the way back to the controller, right? So with those lightning arrestors, they're intended to take a hit. And depending on the size of the surge, they may last, one surge, or they may last more. But if they do blow out or do their job, which is to protect and fail, right, then the symptom of that on your controller would be typically an overcurrent.
Overcurrent.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. They're kind of, I don't know. It's not that they're sacrificial, but sort of they're sacrificial. And the non-technical sort of term might be to attract that surge, right? To suck in that surge and then off ramp it to the plate or the rod to get it away and off the system. And then in that process, they're designed to fail and to fail close. and that would short the system to prevent it from continuing down the line.
Yeah, protecting other decoders that are installed in line, right?
Yeah.
So protecting other decoders from becoming fragments of decoders, like what Dan showed just a moment ago.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Because those decoders, there's significant value associated with them, right?
Yeah, right.
And we want to make sure that we're protecting that and making them work for as long as possible. And by protecting them, we accomplish that.
Yeah, I just had kind of an aha moment that I should have had years ago. We have pins. You can put custom pins on your base manager map. Why not mark the locations for your lightning arrestors? When there's a surge event, typically you might want to go to those locations because they're designed to fail. Yeah. So if you have an overcurrent and you had a lightning strike, go to your surge locations, to your lightning arrestors, and drop a custom pin on the map.
Yeah. Right. Yep. Right. And it may not even be an immediate, direct contact strike, right? You could, if all of a sudden you have an evening where you have thunderstorms in your area, and then the next day you go to the controller and there is an overcurrent, it's kind of easy to use deduction and say, maybe I ought to check my lightning arrestors first before I dive into any other, valve decoder or moisture sensor decoder type troubleshooting. Correct?
Yeah, and that's why I sort of I don't remember sort of telling people to record the lightning arrestor locations. It sort of seems like it might be on the plan, but you might as well make a real note where those locations are.
That is a good insight. Absolutely. And we have the ability to do that, right?
Okay, so Andy, what do you think? I've got pictures from Idral. Do we just want to have them talk about them, or do we want to try the video again?
Well, you could try the video again. Might as well give it a shot.
Okay.
Maybe the wind will be blowing in the right direction for Idral.
Okay, Idral, let's try looking at you.
He's standing in the right amount of water to create a stronger signal.
If he touches his chin like this with his car keys.
The problem is every time I go under the tent, you lose me. So you want to try and get down here to the ground.
All right. So we know that a canvas easy up tent is a cell signal net.
Who figured? Okay. So in your pedestal, we've let's see if we can see those the ground. No. Okay.
Might as well be on Mars.
Okay. Well,
crazy that we can talk to Mars better than we can talk to
Idral.
Okay, sorry, Idral, that's not happening. We'll just have you talk us through it. So I do have.
All right.
Wow. I've got. Let's get you off of there. Okay, so I've got my Idral texted me some photos here. So what we can see here is, besides my desktop, we can see my. Am I sharing the right screen? Am I sharing my phone screen?
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, great. So in the base of this pedestal, we've got this green wire. And where's that green wire going, Idral? That green wire, it's going to that. See if I got the ground lug. There we go. That's going to the ground lug on.
It's going to the ground lug in the back of the.
Yeah, right. So I've just picked that up right there. So where's the other end of the green wire going to? What's it grounded?
It's going out to the right. So in this case, they've got ground rods and ground plates.
Okay. So there's now that's part of our wire spec is our ground spec is there's a minimum distance away from the controller and away from the wire path that this needs to be, because a strike, when it dissipates the energy out to the ground point, there's that sphere of influence, and we don't want that energy coming right back to the controller. So generally it's the length of the rod away from the device you're trying to protect. 8-foot rod, 8 foot away from the device, 10-foot rod, 10 foot away.
Yeah. And he also mentioned something that caught my attention, Dan, was that he's got rods and plates. So is this a triangulated grounding for this pedestal, Idral?
Not triangular. They're doing it's like the 45 with the ground rod and the ground plate.
So it's just two.
So the point is, oftentimes and depending on soil conditions, we may not get the resistance that's required from a single grounding device, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that resistance we're looking for. So just having a ground point connected to the wire or connected to the wire path is great. That's part of the spec. The other half of the spec is having low resistance at that ground point. So Idral here had a clamp-on meter. And a clamp-on meter is only used for testing at the controller. So this would be the pedestal or the cabinet ground. And here it looks like you had 6.2 ohms of resistance. The minimum, the spec is 25 ohms or less. We recognize that 10 ohms is even better. So this definitely meets both of those specifications as far as low resistance.
Yep.
Now
so my question is, did it require the rod and the addition of the plate in order to get to that 6.2 ohms, to get below 10 ohms? Idral?
No, their standard operation is to put, I'm here, I'm trying. They standard put in a rod and a plate on every installation.
Okay.
Now, Chris, and you're probably aware of this. I've heard some thoughts on the frequency of a different types of strikes, and there's a concept that plates and rods help dissipate different frequencies of energy. Definitely more advanced concepts on energy dissipation, but we'll take all the grounding points we can get. I think that's the more you have, the better it is.
Right. So I think the bottom line is that having a better understanding of grounding and grounding techniques and incorporating those into either the design or the actual installation could serve you well in protecting the investment in equipment that you have on the site, right?
1000% agree. Yeah.
Having an understanding of that and knowing what the the outcome intent is will help you to determine how much equipment and protection you need to install in order to protect that device.
Right. So here was the other end of that. That's going to, this is a rod, and then there's a plate connected to that as well. So that's probably why there's two leads coming in. So this is an inspection box, so you can see the ground rod and inspect it and make sure that it's properly connected, because a rod that the wire that goes there, if it's not connected firmly to that ground rod, it's not going to do any good.
Yeah, and it looks like that soil is nice and wet, so that is aiding in that nice low reading.
Yeah, right.
Definitely. Yep. Absolutely.
It's wet, and then you've got what's kind of, this is the double-edged sword for some of the sandier soils or just pure sand soil in Florida and other parts, is that sandy soil is really easy to drive a rod in, where in the county that I'm in, it can be quite rocky soil. And many times we're not going to be able to drive a rod at all. We'll get a couple feet in and it'll stop. So that's easier to drive a rod where Idral is, but sand can be more resistive to it. And to Chris's point, like, you might need multiple points to get that resistance down to an acceptable level. Mm-hmm. Nice. Okay, let's see what other questions we had for Idral. That's the grounding for the controller itself. Then we've got the 2-wire path. So the 2-wire path is grounded, has its own separate ground, or its own separate ground points. And our spec is every 600 feet. And Idral, am I correct in saying that they're using every 400 feet along the wire path?
Right, that's their general spec. And of course, they're not going to just put it in the middle of a blank piece of wire. They're doing it based on valve location as well.
Sure. Yeah. So they've superseded, they've gone, rather than every 600 feet, they said, we're prone to lightning. We want to reduce damage and reduce downtime. We're going to go one up, and we're going to go 400 feet. That's great.
Correct. Yep.
Beautiful. Okay.
And then what does that grounding point look like, Dan?
We didn't have a shot of that one, but on that one, the way that technique's going to work is, off of that ground point, they're going to install a surge arrestor that you had mentioned, and that will shunt the power off to the ground point should it ever see a surge. And then that goes a distance away from the wire path to a ground point. So this is again important that if it's a 8-foot rod, it needs to be 8 foot minimum away from the wire path. If it's a 10-foot rod, it needs to be a minimum 10 foot away, so we don't return that energy back to the wire path.
All right.
And
so by raise of hands, how many of you have ever gone on a site and seen a ground rod driven into the valve box of where the valves are connected? Right. So does that meet
Every
our
time?
spec? Does that meet our specification? No. Will you have problems with surges and high voltage on your wire path if you implement practices like that?
Yeah. And this, Chris, is why that map is important, because in California, you may not have enough lightning to see that problem. In North Carolina, maybe more so. And in Florida, a lot, right? And in New York, maybe not as much. So it's kind of like, does head-to-head coverage matter as much in a rainy area? Not as much. It matters more where it's dry all the time. Like proper grounding matters where it's more lightning prone. It matters more.
That's a good analogy. I like that. Absolutely.
I don't know about you, but for a minute there, I was like 64-bit color. It looked like Super Mario Brothers or something. My camera went weird.
You just teleported back.
I did. Okay. I got 2 more things I wanted to show y'all.
We have 3 minutes, by the way. So
okay,
there you
good.
go.
Then we'll make it quick. And we're not sharing the right screen. We got to share the right screen. Sorry, y'all. And there we go. Okay. So
I'm glad what you did share had a grounding rod on it.
yes, exactly. So grounding is only one component of our warranty criteria, right? So grounding is there, but having the correct wire type, the correct wire splice, not too long of a wire, right length, and then a device load. Those are all critical things for our warranty. So you'll find those details on our website. And what I wanted to point out was then if you go to hydrapoint.com/baseline under resources, you will find our specifications. And this is our grounding specification, right? This is pretty detailed. We have information about rods and plates, surge arrestors, pedestal enclosures. I even like at the bottom, we have one on green roof and green walls. Like, how do you ground that? We've got information on all of that, way more than I would ever want to summarize in a short webinar. This is a great spec to do it in here. I will put this link in the show notes on YouTube, so you'll be able to go directly to this spec if this is information that you wanted.
And in that information, to answer Dr. Black's question that he put into chat, the spec does call for 25 ohms or less, but we really like 10 ohms or less.
There we go. I had to figure out how I was going to translate into my training specs. I say required is 25 ohms, recommended, it's a great idea, 10 ohms.
Yep. Okay, and we've got another question that came in. What about overhead high power lines affecting ground on a controller underneath it? Yeah, I think that is, again, conditional, right? If that high power line takes a hit on the pole that the controller is mounted to or nearby, the impact or effect could be different than if the controller just resides underneath the power line that took a hit some distance away. But I think the underlying point is that the controller needs to be grounded at the controller individually, and then the wire path also grounded according to the spec going from the controller.
Right. I have not had anything come in to me about overhead power lines, so I can't say. I mean, if you are close enough and your heart rate starts to go up, it might be a problem. Otherwise, our just regular grounding spec is the way to go.
From a grounding perspective, it probably isn't as important as the impact on, cell modem communication.
Yeah.
Issues that you may have if you are installed right under high power lines that create that kind of energy.
Well, Idral, thanks for braving the technology out there, but it just shows that we're actually out in the field doing stuff. So thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. And we are at the bottom of the hour.
Hey, can I have a moment for a plug before we sign off?
Absolutely. Plug away.
At baseline.learnupon.com, you can sign up for training courses that are starting in October that are going to run all the way through the spring. So go sign up for a class. I've got 3 series. I've got multiple series, 3 sessions, about an hour and a half a piece. Really get some one-on-one conversation. So really good way to get training for you or your staff. Sign up today.
Absolutely. And those virtual online training classes are going to be the only training offering for the rest of the year, right? So
correct.
We won't be doing in-person trainings. They'll all be virtual. So as we come into downtime for the season, this is a great time to jump online, get some education. And Dan is creating and updating content so it's relevant to the technology that we are shipping today. Right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Very good. I think we're going to follow up on this topic next week. Is that the plan?
That is right. So I'll be out in the field this time, and I'm like 99% sure about my cell coverage. So we'll see.
All right. Very good.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We appreciate your attendance week after week. And again, if there are colleagues that you work with or people in your office that may benefit from participating in this, please extend an invitation to them to join. And all of the previous episodes are recorded and available on Baseline's YouTube channel at Baseline Web Training. All one word. So
yep. And you can just send them to baselinetechtalk.com. That's the sign up registration. Baselinetechtalk.com.
Awesome. Very good.
Go
Thanks,
cool off,
Idral, for joining us the best you could today. Dan, appreciate the input. And Andy, always a pleasure. So we'll see y'all next week for another episode of Tech Talk Tuesday.
See you guys.
Cheers.